Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Adam had always believed he knew his wife. 10 years of marriage create a silent language between two people, a system of gestures and glances that makes words unnecessary. He knew when Claire was tired by the way she twirled her hair around her index finger. He knew when she was anxious by the quick rhythm of her tapping fingers on the table. He knew when she was happy by the way she hummed while making coffee in the morning. Or at least he thought he knew. That Friday night, sitting on their worn-out living room couch as the closing credits of some random movie rolled across the screen, Adam realized he might never have truly known Claire at all. The apartment was too quiet. Only the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the distant traffic on the avenue broke the silence. Claire held the remote control with both hands, gripping it like a lifeline. Her eyes stayed fixed on the dark TV screen, carefully avoiding any contact with his. Adam noticed how she kept biting her lower lip, a nervous tic he hadn't seen in years. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. "Adam, I need to confess something." Her voice came out soft, almost a whisper, but heavy with a weight that instantly tightened his stomach. He turned off the TV with the remote in his hand and faced her completely. His heart raced, though his mind still couldn't fully grasp what was about to happen. "What is it, Claire?" He tried to keep his voice calm, but he heard the tension in his own words. Claire finally looked at him. Tears were forming in the corners of her eyes, and something else Adam couldn't name, guilt, maybe, or fear, or both. I had an affair." The words tumbled out as if she'd rehearsed them 1,000 times but still didn't know the right way to say them. The silence that followed was thick, almost physical. Adam felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. He blinked several times, trying to process the information. "You had an affair." He repeated the words mechanically, as if saying them aloud might help him understand their meaning better. "For the past 6 months." Claire wiped away tears with the back of her hand, but more were already falling. "I'm so sorry. I'm really, truly sorry." 6 months. Half a year. Adam mentally calculated how many times they'd made love in that period, how many times he'd said, "I love you," before leaving for work, how many nights they'd shared dinner and talked about their day as if everything were normal. It had all been a lie. With who? The question came out sharper than he'd intended. Claire closed her eyes for a long moment before answering. "With Julian." The name hit Adam like a punch to the chest. Julian. His best friend since college. His best man. The guy who'd stood by him through every major moment of the past 15 years. The man he thought of as a brother. Julian. Adam repeated the name, the word feeling strange in his mouth, like a foreign phrase. "You're telling me my best friend, that Julian. I know what this means. I know what I've done." Claire reached a hand toward him, but Adam instinctively pulled away, standing up from the couch as if physical contact might burn him. He walked over to the window, staring out at the city lights without really seeing them. His mind raced, combing through memories, searching for signs he should have noticed. The text messages she'd received and quickly deleted. The work meetings that had become more frequent. The evenings Julian would stop by, just to say hi, and Claire would seem unusually excited. How had he been so blind? "There's more." Claire's voice came from behind him, trembling and frightened. Adam slowly turned around, bracing himself for another bombshell. More? What could possibly be worse than this? Claire was standing now, hugging herself as if she were cold. "I'm pregnant." She paused, swallowing hard. "And I don't know whose baby it is." Adam's entire world just stopped. He heard the words, processed their meaning, but for a few seconds his brain refused to accept reality. Pregnant. Didn't know whose it was. That meant. "You're telling me you might be carrying his child." "I don't know. It could be yours." It could be his. I really don't know. Claire's tears were flowing freely now. That's why I'm telling you. I can't keep this to myself anymore. You deserve to know before it becomes obvious. Adam ran his hands through his hair, pulling hard, trying to use the physical pain to anchor himself in reality. Let me get this straight. You cheated on me. With my best friend. For 6 months. And now you're pregnant and don't know whose it is. Each sentence felt like a knife stab. And you're telling me this not because you regret it, but because you're pregnant and can't hide it anymore. It's not like that. Claire took a step toward him. I do regret it. I regret it every single day. I ended things with him 2 weeks ago when I found out about the pregnancy. I don't want to keep lying to you. 2 weeks. Adam let out a humorless laugh. You slept with him until 2 weeks ago and now you expect credit for honesty? I know I have no right to ask for anything. I know what I did is unforgivable. Claire was sobbing now. But I had to tell you. You deserve the truth. Adam stared at her, at the woman he'd promised to spend his life with, and realized he was looking at a stranger. Get out of my sight. His voice was dangerously calm. I need to think. Claire hesitated for a moment, as if she wanted to say something else, but then nodded and left the room. Adam heard the bedroom door close and finally let his legs give out. He sat on the floor, back against the wall, and let the full weight of what he'd just heard crash into him. His marriage was a lie. His best friend was a traitor. And there was a child on the way who might or might not be his. How had his life turned into this in just a matter of minutes? Adam didn't sleep that night. He stayed in his home office, seated in his swivel chair, staring at the ceiling while his mind replayed every detail of the past 6 months. Every lie Claire must have told. Every time Julian looked him in the eye and shook his hand while hiding the deepest betrayal imaginable. By sunrise, Adam already had a plan. It wasn't elaborate or complex. It was simply direct. He needed to confront Julian. He needed to hear from the man he'd once called a brother how he could have done this. At 7 in the morning, Adam grabbed his car keys and left the apartment without saying a word to Claire, who was probably still locked in the bedroom. He knew Julian's routine. Julian always went for a run in the park before work, every morning without fail. It was a ritual they'd shared on weekends for years. Adam arrived at the park just as Julian was finishing his run, stretching near a bench. When Julian saw him approaching, his face immediately went pale. He knew. Of course he knew. Claire must have warned him. Adam, I can explain. Julian started, but Adam raised his hand, cutting him off. No. The word came out firm and cold. You can't explain. There's no explanation for what you did. I just want to know one thing, why? Why the hell would you do this to me? Julian ran a hand over his sweaty face, avoiding Adam's gaze. It wasn't planned. It started innocently. We were talking, she was feeling neglected, and... Neglected? Adam stepped forward, and Julian instinctively backed away. So it's my fault? Is that what you're saying? No, that's not it. Man, I ruined everything. I know I did. Julian finally looked at him, and Adam saw tears in his friend's eyes. I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. For 6 months you were involved with my wife and looked me in the eye like nothing was going on. Anger burned in Adam's chest, but he kept his voice steady. You were my best man, Julian. You gave a speech about loyalty and friendship at my wedding. I know. I know all of it. Julian was openly crying now. I tried to end it several times, but... But what? Anger flared again, but Adam stayed in control. Was it the thrill of betraying me that you couldn't let go of? It wasn't about you. I swear it wasn't about hurting you. Adam laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. It wasn't about me. You got involved with my wife and it wasn't about me? She's pregnant, Julian. Pregnant. And she doesn't know whose baby it is. How is that not about me? All the color drained from Julian's face. Pregnant? He staggered slightly, grabbing the bench for support. She didn't tell me. Of course she didn't. Because she used you just as much as she betrayed me. Adam watched realization cross Julian's face. Did you think you were special? That there was something real between you two? She confessed because she's desperate, Julian. Not out of guilt, not out of love, pure desperation. Julian sat down on the bench, putting his head in his hands. What are you going to do? I'll do a DNA test when the baby is born. And then I'll decide the rest of my life, far away from both of you. Adam turned to leave but stopped and looked back one last time. We were brothers, Julian. I would have given my life for you. And you destroyed everything for 6 months of lies. Adam, please. Julian reached out, but Adam was already walking toward his car. The drive home was a blur. Adam barely remembered driving. When he walked into the apartment, Claire was in the kitchen making coffee as if it were just another ordinary day. She turned when she heard the door, her eyes red and swollen. You went to see him. It wasn't a question. I did. Adam grabbed a coffee mug, more to have something to do with his hands than because he actually wanted coffee. He cried. Said it wasn't about hurting me. As if that makes any difference. Claire was silent for a moment. And now? Now? Now we wait. We do the test when the baby is born. And then we see what's left of this mess. Adam took a sip of coffee, burning his tongue. You'll go to your prenatal appointments. You'll take care of your health and the baby's. And we'll live in this apartment like strangers until we have the answers we need. Adam, I understand if you want me to leave. No. He cut her off. You stay. If this baby is mine, I'm not going to miss a single moment of the pregnancy because of your choices. And if it's not, well, at least I'll know I did the right thing until the end. The following months were a silent torture. Adam set up a separate room in his office. They spoke only when necessary, maintaining a cold civility that hurt more than any fight ever could. He attended every doctor's appointment, saw the ultrasounds, heard the baby's heartbeat, and each time felt torn between hope and fear. Claire tried a few times to start deeper conversations, to talk about couples therapy, about trying to rebuild. But Adam always deflected. There was no rebuilding something that had been so utterly destroyed. Trust, once broken like this, couldn't simply be glued back together with pretty words and empty promises. Julian tried calling a few times in the first weeks, but Adam blocked his number. There was nothing left to say. Their friendship had died that day in the park, and there was no bringing it back. When Claire went into labor, Adam drove her to the hospital with steady hands on the wheel and a tightness in his chest. He stayed by her side through the entire birth, holding her hand when she screamed, wiping her sweat, whispering words of encouragement, because that's what decent people did, no matter what pain they carried. When the nurse placed the baby in Claire's arms, Adam looked at the tiny wrinkled face and felt something inside him break. A girl. A beautiful baby girl with closed eyes and clenched fists. And he had no idea if this innocent child was his daughter or the daughter of his former best friend. She's perfect. Claire cried, looking at Adam with hope in her eyes. Adam, she's perfect. He nodded, unable to speak. She was perfect. And that perfection made everything even more painful. 3 days later, in the hospital room, a nurse came to collect samples for the DNA test. Adam had insisted on doing it as soon as possible. Claire agreed without question. They both knew there was no moving forward without that answer. Waiting for the results was pure agony. 10 days that felt like 10 years. Adam returned home with Claire and the baby, but kept his emotional distance. He changed diapers, prepared bottles, stayed awake through crying nights. But he didn't allow himself to feel fully, not yet. When the envelope arrived in the mail, Adam held it for several minutes before opening it. Claire was in the living room, the baby sleeping in the crib beside her. She looked at him, fear clear in her eyes. Adam opened the envelope with trembling fingers and read the result once, twice, 3 times. The letters danced on the page, but the conclusion was clear and undeniable. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. He was the father. Adam slowly sat down on the couch, the paper still in his hands. He was the father. That beautiful little girl was his biological daughter. After months of uncertainty, torture, and fear, he finally had his answer. Claire approached slowly, seeing the shift in his expression. "Is she yours?" Her voice was a hopeful whisper. "She's mine." Adam confirmed, but his voice was empty of emotion. Claire's face lit up with relief and something that looked like hope. "Adam, that means we can try again. We can be a family. I'll go to therapy, I'll do whatever it takes, we can rebuild." "No." The word came out firm and final. Claire stopped mid-sentence, confusion replacing hope. "What?" Adam looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. "No, Claire. We're not rebuilding. The fact that she's my daughter doesn't change what happened. It doesn't change those 6 months of secrets. It doesn't change that you betrayed not just our marriage, but our most important friendship. It doesn't change anything. But she's yours. We can be a family." Tears started falling again. "We'll never be a family." "Not in the way you mean." Adam stood up, placing the paper on the coffee table. "I'll be a present father. I'll be in my daughter's life every single day. But you and me? We're done. This ended months ago, Claire. You just hadn't realized it yet. Please, Adam. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. I still love you." Adam shook his head slowly. "Love doesn't do what you did. Love doesn't break trust like this. Love doesn't put someone you supposedly love through months of uncertainty and pain." He picked up his car keys. "I'll stay at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow I'll come back, and we'll discuss the details of our separation, lawyers, shared custody, everything." "You can't be serious. The baby just arrived. We just found out she's yours." "Exactly. She's mine. And I'll do everything I can to be the best father possible for her." Adam walked toward the door but paused in the doorway. "But I can't do that while living a lie. I can't wake up every day next to someone I no longer trust. I can't pretend everything's okay when I look at you and all I see is betrayal." Claire was sobbing uncontrollably now. "Julian means nothing. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake I'll regret for the rest of my life. You're right about one thing. You will regret it." Adam opened the door. "But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life being reminded of that regret. I deserve better than that. And my daughter deserves to grow up seeing her father with dignity, not as a man who accepted being second best." He left, closing the door gently behind him. In the hallway, he paused for a moment, leaning his forehead against the cool wall. It hurt. It hurt more than any physical pain he'd ever felt. But it was the pain of making the right choice, not the pain of accepting the wrong one. In the months that followed, Adam kept his word. He rented a small but comfortable apartment just a few blocks away. He set up a generous visitation schedule, picking up his daughter 3 times a week and on alternating weekends. He changed diapers, gave bottles, sang off-key lullabies, and fell more in love with that child every single day. Claire tried several times to reopen conversations about reconciliation, but Adam remained firm. Kind, but firm. He didn't hate her. Hate required emotional energy he no longer had to give. He'd simply accepted that some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed. And that was okay. The divorce process was relatively smooth. Neither of them had the energy to fight. They divided their belongings fairly, established official shared custody, and signed the papers without drama. At the final hearing, when the judge officially dissolved their marriage, Adam felt not sadness, but a strange sense of relief. He was finally free. He heard through mutual acquaintances that Julian had moved to another city. Apparently, the weight of guilt and the loss of his most important friendship had been too much to bear in the same place. Adam didn't feel satisfaction about it, or compassion. He simply felt nothing. Julian had become a distant memory of a life that no longer existed. 6 months after the divorce, Adam was at the park with his daughter, now 8 months old, sitting in a special baby swing. She giggled each time he gently pushed her, her toothless smile lighting up her whole face. He snapped a photo with his phone, wanting to capture that moment of pure joy. That's when he saw Claire across the park. She was alone, sitting on a bench, watching them. Even from a distance, Adam could see she'd lost weight, that there was a sadness in her shoulders that hadn't been there before. For a moment, their eyes met. She didn't wave or come closer. She just looked, and in that look was all the weight of what she'd lost. Adam looked away and turned his attention back to his daughter, pushing the swing again and being rewarded with another delicious laugh. He didn't feel victory seeing Claire like that. No petty joy or satisfaction from revenge. He only felt a melancholic acceptance that they were both living with the consequences of choices made. Later that night, with the baby sleeping peacefully in her crib in his new apartment, Adam sat on the small balcony with a beer, watching the city lights. He thought about how his life had completely changed in less than a year. How one confession on a Friday night had completely dismantled the reality he'd known. But as he looked at the baby monitor beside him, seeing his daughter sleep peacefully, Adam realized something important. Yes, Claire had destroyed their marriage. Yes, Julian had destroyed a friendship. But they hadn't destroyed him. Adam was still standing. He still had his integrity, his dignity, and most importantly, he had his daughter. The betrayal hadn't given him a choice about being lied to. But it had given him a choice about how to respond. And he'd chosen not to let the pain turn him bitter. He'd chosen not to let other people's mistakes define his worth. He'd chosen to be a present father, an honorable man, and eventually, when he was ready, someone capable of trusting again. Some stories don't have perfectly happy endings. Some wounds leave scars that never fully fade. But Adam had learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means choosing not to let it define who you are. And as the city sparkled below and his daughter slept inside, Adam let himself feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not full happiness, not yet, but peace. The peace of knowing he'd made the right choices, even when they hurt. The peace of knowing that, no matter what lay ahead, he was building a life based on truth, not convenient illusions. Claire would have to live with her choices. Julian would have to live with his. And Adam would live with his. The difference was that he could look in the mirror every morning without shame. He could look at his daughter without regret. And that, in the end, was worth more than any forced reconciliation or pretend forgiveness ever could be. Life would go on. There would be challenges ahead, hard moments, days when the pain would flood back with full force. But Adam now knew he was strong enough to face them. Because the person who emerges from betrayal, still standing with their dignity intact, discovers a strength they never knew they had. And that strength, Adam realized, no one could ever take from him, not Claire with her tears and pleas for forgiveness, not Julian with his guilt and escape, not the past with all its lies. He'd become someone new through the fire of pain, not necessarily someone better, but someone more honest with himself. Someone who knew what he deserved and was no longer afraid to claim it. The night grew cooler, and Adam finished his beer, stepping back inside the apartment. He locked the door, double-checked that the baby was okay, and finally allowed himself to go to bed. Tomorrow would be a new day. And each new day would take him one step farther from the pain, one step closer to some version of himself he was still discovering. Before turning off the light, Adam looked at the photo on his nightstand. It wasn't the wedding picture anymore. It was a new one, taken the week before, of him holding his daughter, both of them smiling. A new story. A new beginning. Not perfect, but honest. And honesty, he'd learned the hard way, was worth more than any fairy tale built on lies. He turned off the light and closed his eyes, and for the first time in nearly a year, he slept deeply, without nightmares, without waking up in the middle of the night with a tight chest. He slept the sleep of someone who'd made peace not with what had happened, but with who he'd become because of it. And that, finally, was enough. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.